This is Notes on the Way of Initiation by Rudolf Steiner. The true mystic is a man who enters into full possession of his inner life and who, having become cognizant of his subconsciousness, finds in it, through concentrated meditation and steady discipline, new faculties and enlightenment. He seeks for truth and the divine directly within himself by a gradual detachment and an authentic birth of his higher self. Self-mastery gives mastery over others. The divine soul is present in all men, but in a latent state. It is a sleeping captive that has to be awakened from enchantment. The spirit, which contains the future engermed, involves itself in matter. Thus matter, which receives the spirit, evolves towards the future. While we are moving towards the future, this future is approaching us consciously, infusing itself in the current of the world and the man who elaborates it. Be masculine in spirit, a born ruler of men. Spare not yourself and do not spare others. Make your will like a ball which, once shot from the cannon's mouth, goes straight to its mark, sweeping off everything in its way. It is in the extremity of distress that you will find your weapons and your brothers in the fight. I have shown you who you are. Now go and be thyself. Ignorance cannot convince knowledge by repeated asseveration of its nescience. The opinion of 100 persons on a subject of which they are wholly ignorant is of no more weight than the opinion of one such person. Evidence is strengthened by many consenting witnesses, testifying each to his knowledge of a fact, but nothing multiplied 1,000 times remains nothing. The average intellect sets itself up in naive pride as a judge in domains the existence of which it does not even care to know. No one can rightly understand the historic truth of such documents as the Gospels unless he has first experienced within himself the mystical meanings which they contain. The life of the Spirit can be understood only when we do not presume to criticize it with the lower mind, but rather when we develop it reverently within ourselves. No one can hope to learn anything of the higher truths if he demands that they shall be lowered to the average understanding. Spiritual or mystic knowledge is no more a secret for the average man than writing is a secret to him who has never learned to read. It is a strict law with all initiates to withhold from no man the knowledge that is due to him. But there is an equally strict law which insists that no one shall receive any knowledge until he is worthy and well prepared. You may live in close friendship with an initiate, yet this wall will separate him from you just as long as you have not become an initiate yourself. You may enjoy in the fullest sense the heart, the love of an initiate, yet he will only impart to you his secret when you yourself are ready for it. You may flatter him, you may torture him, nothing will induce him to divulge to you anything which he knows ought not to be disclosed, inasmuch as you, at the present stage of your evolution, do not understand rightly how to receive the secret into your soul. Have you ever passed outside the door of some venerated man, and have you, on this your first visit, felt a religious awe as you pressed the handle in order to enter the room for which you is a holy place? Which for you is a holy place? Then there has been manifested in you an emotion which may be the germ of your future discipleship. It is a blessing for every developing person to have such emotions upon which to build. Only it must not be thought that such qualities contain the germ of submissiveness and slavery. Experience teaches us that those can best hold their heads erect who have learned to venerate where veneration is due, and veneration is always in its own place when it rises from the depths of the heart. If we do not develop within ourselves this deeply rooted feeling that there is something higher than ourselves, we shall never find enough strength to evolve to something higher. He who seeks for higher knowledge must create it within himself. He himself must instill it into his soul. It cannot be done by study. It can only be done through living. He who wishes to become a disciple must therefore assiduously cultivate the devotional mood. Everywhere in his environment, he must look for that which demands of him admiration and homage. He should try to abstain entirely from all criticism or judgment. If I meet a brother and I blame him for his weakness, I rob myself of power to win the higher knowledge. But if I try to enter lovingly into his merits, I then gather such power. The disciple should seek to benefit both himself and others, continuously search for the good in all things, and withhold all harsh criticism when possible. This must not only be an external rule of life, but it must take possession of the innermost part of our souls. We have it in our power to perfect ourselves and by to transform ourselves completely. But this transformation must take place in the innermost self, in the mental life. It is not enough that I show respect only in my outward bearing toward a person. I must have this respect in my thought. The disciple must begin by drawing this devotion into his thought life. He must altogether banish from his consciousness all thoughts of disrespect, of criticism, and he must endeavor straightway to cultivate thoughts of devotion. We rise rapidly when we fill our consciousness with only those thoughts that evoke admiration, respect, and veneration for men and things. Give up oneself less and less to the impressions of the outer world and develop in its place a vivid inward life. Only what we experience within ourselves reveals the beauties of the outer world. Do not learn in order that you may accumulate wisdom as your own treasure, but in order that you may put your learning at the service of the world. We are interwoven with our own actions and experiences. The higher self says, I will summon all my strength in order to do my work as well as possible, where the lower self would say timidly, I lack the power to do this as well as I could wish. He suppresses all thoughts which encourage timidity, for he knows that this very timidity might spoil his undertaking, and that in any event it can contribute nothing to the improvement of his labor. And thus, one thought after another, each fraught with advantage to his whole life, begins to penetrate the student's outlook. They take the place of those which gave a hampering and weakening effect. He begins to steer his own ship on a firm, secure course among the waves of life, which formerly tossed it helplessly to and fro. This calm and serenity reacts on the whole being. We must remember that the higher being in a man is in constant development, and only the state of calm and serenity described renders an orderly development possible. The waves of outward life press in upon the inner from all sides, if, instead of controlling this outward life, he is controlled by it. Such a man is like a plant which tries to expand in a cleft in the rock, and is stunted in its growth until new space is given. No outward forces can supply space for the inner man. It can only be supplied by the inner calm which he may give to his soul. Outward circumstances can only alter the course of his outward life. They can never awaken the spiritual inner man. The student must himself give birth to the new and higher man within him. The higher man becomes the inner ruler, who directs the circumstances of the outer man with sure guidance. If another than myself has the power to make me angry, I am not master of myself. Calm contemplation must become a necessity to the student. Plunge yourself completely into a world of thought. You must develop an earnest desire for calm thinking. You must learn to love the inpouring of the Spirit. This thought world is an expression of life that allows you the ability to listen with your soul. This thought life of the soul is designated by the Gnostic and Theosophy as meditation, which is contemplative thought. This meditation is the means by which supersensual knowledge is attained. You must not permit undefined feelings to take possession of your soul. You will begin then to realize that your most insignificant actions or experiences, your labor and sufferings are given and endured for the sake of a great spiritual cosmic whole. Thus, instead of weariness, your meditations should give you strength to live. With firm step, the student advances in life. No matter what it may bring him, he goes forward, erect. In the past, he knew not why he worked and suffered, but now he knows. We can advance in our enlightenment only when we guard our thoughts and feelings in just the same way a man would guard the steps he takes in the physical world. He who makes a practice of listening uncritically, even when a completely contradictory opinion is advanced, learns again and again to blend himself, to become identified with the being of another. He then hears through the words and into the souls of others. The teacher must be a pillar of strength to him who strives to penetrate through darkness into light. Man ordinarily carries body, soul, and spirit with him, yet is conscious only of the body, not of the soul and the spirit. And the student in due time attains to a similar consciousness of his soul and his spirit. You must ever retain a calm repose within your own individuality and an open mind for everything. For every one step that you take in the pursuit of knowledge, take 3 steps in the perfecting of your own character. To face danger calmly, to try to overcome difficulties unswervingly, this is what the student must learn to do. For instance, in the presence of some peril, he must rise at once to the conception that fears are altogether useless, and not to be entertained for one moment, but that the mind ought simply to be concentrated on what is to be done. He must reach a point where it has become impossible for him to ever again feel afraid or to lose his courage. You must always fight your way on through life with the firm conviction that the universe contains inexhaustible fountains of strength from which you may drink. Remember, you are the all in all. You must aspire again and again to God, who will uplift and support you. You must be capable of pressing on towards the future, undismayed by any experiences of the past or along the way. Truth alone must guide. There must be perfect readiness at once to surrender any existing opinion, idea, or inclination when the logical idea demands it. All is entirely in your hands. Nothing external impels or induces you to act. You must find the way of your own accord and from within yourself. Nothing and nobody but you yourself and the God within you, your highest being, the all in all, can give you the strength you need. In all matters, you must truly know yourself and instantly resolve to hear and obey the suggestions and inspirations of your spirit. Only in yourself can you find that one sure center point on which you can depend. If one judges things today by the experiences of yesterday, he is subjected to a multitude of errors. Of course, it is not intended that the reader should renounce all the experiences acquired in life. He ought always to keep it in mind as firmly as possible. You should acquire the ability to judge every fresh experience, irrespective of oneself, unclouded by all bygone experiences. One must be prepared at every moment that a new thing or being shall bring to one a new revelation. If one judges the new by the standard of the old, he necessarily falls into error. The memory of past experiences is very useful, however, for it makes one better able to perceive the new. If one had not gone through a certain experience, he probably would not have seen the attributes of this or that being or thing. But having had such experiences, he ought to be enabled to discern the new without judging by the old. Breathe and see by your soul. Speak and hear with your spirit. Patience has an attractive, while impatience has a repellent effect on the treasures of enlightenment. He who wishes to have true wealth and knowledge for his own sake alone will never obtain it. It is absolutely demanded that one should be true to himself in his innermost soul. One must not dare be deceived by anything. He must encounter face to face and with absolute truthfulness his own faults, failings, and unfitness. The moment you try to excuse to yourself any of your weaknesses, you place an obstacle in the way which leads upward. Our faults and weaknesses can be removed only by self-illumination, and that is by correctly understanding them. All that is needed lies latent in the human soul and can be evoked. A man immediately improves his understanding and his reason when in repose He makes it clear to himself why he is weak in any respect. Self-knowledge of this kind is naturally difficult, for the temptation to deceive oneself is immeasurably great. You must ask yourself only what things will assist you in the perfection of your innermost being for the service of your evolution. You must listen devoutly to all that contributes to this end and seek every opportunity of doing so. The spiritual teacher never goes a step further unless it be in accord with the free will of the recipient. Only from a healthy man may a healthy perception proceed. Duty must in many cases be accounted higher than health, indeed if need be higher than life itself. But the disciple must never put pleasure as high as either one of these. The student must be able to realize the idea that his thoughts and feelings are as important for the world as his deeds. In your own sincere and wisdom-seeking soul, and only there, must you look for the recognition of your truth. But from your environment you must learn as much as you possibly can, that you may discern what those around you need and what is of use to them. You must have firmness in the carrying out of any resolution once it has been made. Nothing should induce the disciple to deviate from any such resolution once it is formed, save only the perception that he has made a mistake. Every resolution is a force, and even if such a force does not produce immediate effect on the point at which it was directed, nevertheless it works in its own way. Success is of great importance only when an action arises from desire, but all actions which are rooted in desire are worthless in relation to the higher worlds. Thus the love expended on an action is alone of importance. In this love, all that impels the student to perform an action ought to be implanted. Thus he will never grow weary of again and again and again carrying out in action some resolution, even though he has repeatedly failed. In this way he arrives at the condition in which he does not first count on the external effect of his actions, but is contented with the doing of them. He will learn to sacrifice for the world his actions, nay, more, his whole being, without caring at all how his sacrifice may be received. He who wishes to truly become a disciple must declare himself ready for such a sacrifice as this. The disciple must train himself that not in deeds only, but also in words, thoughts, and feelings, he will never destroy anything for the sake of destruction. He must find his pleasure in the growing and creating aspect of things. The best way to combat imperfection and evil is by the creation of the perfect and the good. I found one law, the law of love, one life, the life of adjustment to that law, one truth, the truth of a conquered mind and a quiet and obedient heart. I love you, Papa.